Hi there everyone, welcome back to the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. I am continuing on my quest to wake up a very sleepy, sound asleep Simpsons sewing machine, and it was a fancy one. Even has built-in button holder, which can be a good thing or a nightmare. I'll talk more about that as I go through the machine restoration. This machine is unusual in some ways. What is common, and I'm fortunate that the up and down needle will move. It's stiff, but it moves. However, every one of these knobs, now the tension assembly knobs is not typically a problem, but this knob, needle position, this knob for zigzag, and the straight stitch lever, they're all stuck. And of course, you know that the feed dog adjustment, that's stuck. That it always is, 95% of the time. So in getting ready I'm going to try my luck with a penetrant oil. I don't always need to do this, but I'm going to try this. But before I do that, in the prior video, I talked about removing things that need to be removed or should be removed before I try this, because we're not going to hose the whole machine. We're going to be focused, but the overspray of using penetrants, we definitely don't want it to get in our motor. That's why I removed the motor. And I pulled up some of the power cord. This one was easier to deal with than the white model was, although we dealt with it. And I'm going to put this in a little bag. And why am I doing that? Just in case. I don't anticipate anything getting sprayed on here, but why not? It's cheap insurance, right? I'm going to buy these in bulk at Costco. I got like 1,000 of these bags. That I normally use in my kitchen. I didn't buy all of those just for sewing machines. I don't use these very often for sewing machine activity, restoration. But in this case, I'm just doing that, okay? Now I've taken all my screws and bolts, all these little pieces I took off. I just put them down in the cover. You can put them in something else, something that they will be safe in. I'm just going to set them over here in that old Singer tray for the moment. Now, when it comes to penetrants, we have our choice. Remember, we have PB. I have PB Blaster. I have 3-in-1 penetrant product, and then I've got others as well. I typically like to start with the penetrant that is the least offensive odor-wise, and we all vary in terms of how sensitive we are to certain things and how they smell. So we'll see how this one works. None of them smell great. Some of them are worse. If the 3-in-1 doesn't do it, I can always move on to something like Liquid Wrench. It's one of the better ones. It also stinks, and it stinks for a long time. And I really don't want stink. It's something I have very little patience for. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to show you when I say I'm targeting, I'm basically going to spray the penetrant. I'm not hosing it down like I'm washing a car here. I just want to put it in areas where I see linkages, things that, yes, I can't actually test to see what's moving against one part against another. But I know that a lot of the linkages here, remember, as we get more features added, as we go through the 60s, the mechanicals in a sewing machine become more complex. They're not computerized, but there are more pieces to the puzzle that make it all work. And so the other thing I'm having to do, I can take my flashlight and shine it this way because I need to get penetrant down in here. These are areas that I might normally just use sewing machine oil, sometimes a little bit of alcohol, but this machine is it's a lot sleepier than most. Now, there's a technique. I'm going to turn the machine to the side for a moment. Well, actually, before we do that, we can come over and quickly. Remember, if you're having to turn your machine, remember, I have a motor that's attached. I don't want it dropping, so pay attention to anything that's attached to the machine, but maybe not in it at the moment. All right, I'm going to come over here. And even though I do have some movement on in this area, remember, right down here is my light bulb, right there. Right here. okay, and it's got the wire. I don't need to spray penetrant anywhere near that, and because I can move it back, basically what I'm doing is I'm putting the penetrant oil in the moving parts in this area. And probably sewing oil and a little alcohol will take care of the pressure bar and the needle bar. However, that's for the vertical motion. Remember, right here, you guys see that right there? Right now, the machine, it's supposed to be on a wide zigzag, but at some point, right here, right where you see me placing the red stick, that is a longitudinal, that's a shaft that the needle bar moves sideways on, okay? And that's a very vulnerable point. When a machine gets frozen, that's one of the areas. And it's more vulnerable than, say, you know, the vertical motion of the needle bar. That's why it's a little more, you basically have to, baby it a little bit more. It's a little fussier than other areas. What else can we look at? For example, there are two areas. Remember, this is the only area I can open. This is actually, this dividing line is just paint. Beautifully done. But this is all one piece. So I can't get above every single one of these. What I can do is remember that, hey, they still had an oil access hole for the machine. There's one here, and one here, and right here. It's curious though why this one is shaped like this. It's very odd because the others are just open. I'm not sure. This may not, if it doesn't take any, it's there for some other purpose. All right, now one of the things that I'm going to turn the machine, we're going to come back around to the motor side, and again I have to be careful because I don't want my motor to go wandering away or falling away. I need it to be well cared for. The quality of the motors back in the day was very high, and that's the last thing. You can get replacements, and it's great that you can, but isn't it nice not to have to? All right, so I'm going to lower down, and we'll take a look at what do I want to put some penetrant on from this angle. Well, remember the bolts that are in there like crazy tight? I'm going to put just some right here. I don't want to splash it up on the tire. And then once I manage to get this bracket undone, which will make me really happy if I can, I'm just going to let that sit. Probably going to let it sit overnight because it's on there a while. Penetrants don't work immediately. I mean, if you get lucky, they do. Some people will use them and add heat, but if I'm going to use heat, I'm using it with sewing machine oil and maybe alcohol. Because if I use heat with these penetrants, it causes the odors to just get off the chart, and I'm really not a fan of that. So I'm going to lower the camera down so we can kind of take a look from this side. This is the other access point that we've got for the machine. I'll tuck that cord out of our way. All right, what's in here? Well, I see pieces. These arms here, these rotating arms, I know that they are part of the movement of the machine. And remember, you know, I can't seem to get the dial to turn for me at all. That front stitch control lever. So I'm going to come behind it and just spray in behind there. And anything that appears to have mechanical capacity, I'm going to put some penetrant oil on like you just see me do right there. Now, what area have we not addressed? Those of you who know my channel, you've seen enough of my videos to know that, oh, well, he hasn't gone underneath yet, and you would be right. So that's next. All right. Swiveling around again. Strongly recommend a big, old, fluffy towel like the one I've got. It's good because it's going to absorb. This penetrant is going to, yes, it is going to run, dribble, and I don't want it on any furniture. All right. Oh. And you want to do this gingerly because, again, one of the heaviest machines I've ever grabbed a hold of, and I think it's just the sheer thickness of the cast iron. All right, now we can see quite a lot. We know that, again, this is part of the mechanism for the feed dog lowering adjustment, and it is almost always frozen. That I was not surprised to see at all. What else can we see? Well, first of all, as I mentioned to you many times, it doesn't matter whether you're using penetrant oil for a kind of a difficult case like this, or maybe you are just, you have a machine that you're trying to oil and get started. Maybe it's not as bad off as this one, but look here, right? I don't want to spray any here yet. I probably should have cleaned this before I sprayed anything, but nothing has really dripped down into this area because I want all of this cobweb and dust, as I really want this off of here before I start spraying anything, whether it's sewing oil or in this case penetrant, because then instead of having loose dust or lint that I can remove, I'll have mud, and that's just make sure you can remove it if you forget and you do it. You know, there's nothing tragic about it, but good grief, it's going to be a royal pain to. It's just more inconvenient to have to take out oily dust, which turns to a mud, than it is if you just, you know, try to get a lot of the dust out of there before you put any liquid on there of any kind. And I've got, again, the machine sat. Now this machine was in a table, and so when it was down, it would have, actually the bottom of the machine normally faces the back of the cabinet, so I'm surprised it has this much dust, but who knows? Who knows what happens to a machine over its lifetime? Now I also have a lint brush that I can use. This is useful, again, if I'm trying to get in areas that I can't reach with a cotton swab. I mean, some of these areas don't really have much dust. It actually, you know, I don't see a lot of old oil or much of anything down here. Something tells me that I don't think the bottom of the machine ever got oiled all that much. I mean, it's very dry, right, compared to some of the other areas. And that's, you know, some people don't know. I mean, either they don't read the manual, they know there's oiling holes up top, and, you know, who knows? Or maybe the person using it could not lift it because it was so heavy. So they didn't want to have to turn it back. And again, dust and lint will hide on you. Look right here. You guys see, you can if I point the camera down there. Right here. Look at that. Look at that. Big giant dust bunnies there coming off. Oh boy. And again, this could just be lint. But we really, in fact, I can see that happening now. I can already, wow. Oh, bunnies galore. Look at that. Wow. So if I do it with the cotton swab, I'm trying to keep it from getting into the air so I don't have to choke on it. But if you're allergic to dust, that it's nice to have, and if you have a cotton swab, you can put alcohol on the swab, and that will keep the dust more on the swab and less in the air floating around you. And again, if I can't get all the way back there with the swab, then I can always use my lint brush. A lint brush is good for lint, but it's obviously good for cleaning dust and God knows what off of a machine that has not been tended to for a long time. It's even some in here. Of course, I haven't cleaned the feed dog area, and I think that's where a lot of this dust here is coming from. Come out of there. It's running away from me. One way or another, I got that little clump out of there. And again, you will eventually, as you explore a machine, let's say you just got one of these, you know, you just go around it and you'll learn where there's certain areas, every machine has them where lint and dust likes to hide. I think the White Company at one point was making machines in the 60s that said had some sort of lint cleaner device. I'll have to explore that and do a video on that sometime. Next time I have one. I've had them and I just haven't done the videos. But anyway, my goal here normally I would, of course, as all of you know in my other videos, I start from the top, work my way down, getting rid of dust, and then I oil the machine and sometimes add a little, maybe a little valve oil with some solvent in it, or even alcohol on the moving parts to get them moving. But the reason I haven't even investigated the feed dog area yet, which I eventually will, the reason I haven't done that yet is because right now I can't even get the machine to move at all. So my biggest concern is, now if I had a ton of, there was some dust in here, but I've gotten it all out. So, and I've removed, everything here. There may be some more coming, but what I'm going to do is take my penetrant, pull the camera back a bit so you guys can get a little bit better view of the whole machine here. And what I'm doing, so I'm just going to I'll start up top like I do when I oil a machine. And again, I'm just targeting certain areas. I don't need to put it here because that's just a shaft, right? I need to put it where things move. And don't forget, and this is always easy to miss, and it's very hard to show to you guys because of where it is. Let's see if I can get a better view. If I come up here, you guys see this right here, right? There's two pieces that move, that rotate there, and they're very difficult to show because it's just a narrow slit at the top, and it's one of the most difficult things to make sure you guys can see. Where's my flashlight? Maybe that'll help us. Oh no. Can you guys see in there? I'll point with the sprayer stick right there. You guys see that? Right? And then there's one over here. Well, that's actually a rotating arm. So I definitely want to get, I'm going to get penetrant stuff in there. And then what's next? What do we need to take a look at? Making sure I get as much of the dust filth out as I can. Because if I don't, it's just going to turn into mud and make my machine cranky. Or it can, depending on where the mud is. If it's just on the side of something, it's just, it's an aesthetic thing. You want to get the crud off, but you don't want it in where the moving parts are. That's, I guess, the main concern there. All right, so now let's pull back again. Okay, so we've got here, we've got there. Now I'll go ahead and put penetrant. I should probably use more penetrant more often when I'm dealing with something like these feed dog lowering mechanisms. It's a very common thing, and you all have heard me talk about it. If you've had vintage sewing machines, you probably discovered that thing is often stuck. Oops, forgot about this part of the mechanism up here. And they get stuck easily because they don't get used. It's interesting that the manufacturers offered them. They would go to the trouble. It's like, well, someone may want to do free motion work, and so they would do that. Now, here I'm gonna just spray right here, not just for the hole itself, but where this piece comes together. And that's about it. That's what I'm going to do. Now, if you do this, I know it. You're thinking, oh, this penetrant is going to help. It can, but it's going to need to sit. It would be shocking to me, as stiff as this machine is, if I say, oh, well, I'll just put the penetrant in it and turn it. It's just not one of those goofy commercials where they oversell stuff. This is something that it really requires time and patience, because yeah, there are certain chemicals that can work faster, but they're a lot more aggressive and can be very nasty. I know I've had people recommend to me in the past that you can use brake cleaner. Brake clean. Brake cleaner was designed to clean brakes on cars, and they often get lots and lots of crud built up on them. And brake cleaner is effective, but it's also extremely toxic. highly, highly toxic, especially the chlorinated kind, which is the kind that works the best, of course. So you don't have to do that. Some people have done it. Maybe they did it outside. I chose not to use that product in the past when I had a machine I could not wake up, as you will recall if you know my channel. However, a lot of the products that I show you that I do use, they actually work quite well. They just take a little longer. They're a little more gentle. They need more time to work. And that is my preference. You may have a different preference, and that's okay. But again, just know, because a number of people, when they start trying to get an old machine moving, it may be the first time you've ever done it, or maybe the first time you've ever used penetrants and different types of substances to wake up your machine. And if you're new to that especially, you want to know, just again, this is why I sound like I overemphasize. Make note of what is in the penetrant. Are you sensitive to it, and can you do it outside or under? Maybe you have a covered porch or something when the weather's nice. Do everything you can to limit how much of this, because the last thing you want to do is have your upholstery smell like kerosene. Trust me, you do not. By the way, for those of you who haven't asked, sometimes people forget to ask, there's a little compartment in here. This is typically where you find grease. There is what's called a differential. This is where there is a gear at the end of this shaft over here, and it connects to another gear that rotates in a different direction, and that's what drives the shuttle on this particular machine. And so it's interesting that they have this design, and they have it permanently, not permanently, it's designed to be serviced with grease, and we'll talk about that in a different video. But just know that typically, if the grease is old, it might get thick, but it normally would not freeze a machine. It would be, is it possible theoretically? Yes, but I've never had it happen. That doesn't mean it can't. But typically, if the grease is old, it's separated. It's usually there's a little seal, like a seal that goes around here, because when grease starts to get old, it comes out of suspension, and it starts to, the solids in the oil separate, and the oil gets drippy. But this is not, I'm not concerned about this. This is a low level concern. My biggest concern is to get things moving, and just in case, some of you didn't even notice this, but I have a bobbin case here and a thread. Okay, well, I have a full thread of full bobbin on this one, but I have threads that are hanging out here. What's going on? Is that? Okay, I pull those out. Keep in mind that there are many things that can stop your machine dead in its tracks. This is one of them. And I've talked about this in a number of videos. And you may think your machine needs waking up, and it does, because it's just, the machine is like totally dead in the water because of thread. But that is not, does not appear to be the case with this machine. So, all right. Now I'm going to wait. We wait to see if this will help. And if it doesn't, after a day, I'll give it another day or two. And what will happen is the penetrant oils, penetrant products, they are not sewing machine oil. You don't use them in place of it. Many of you know you don't use WD-40 or any of the penetrant oils as an oil. They are very useful for what I'm using them for, which is to penetrate, to get into parts that have old sewing oil that has acted like glue, and the machine is just stuck in its tracks. And these penetrants are a combination. They have oils in them, but they also have solvents, and that's why they're very thin. That's why they're able to penetrate, and you will smell the solvent. And then as the solvent flashes off, just solvent speak for drying, as it dries and evaporates, it will leave a remnant of some kind of oil there, something oily and greasy looking, and hopefully it's the solvent, though, that does most of the dissolving, hopefully, we hope, of the old oil, because this machine was running beautifully when it was new, and it had sewing machine oil. But remember, it's more than, more than 60 years ago, isn't it? Yeah, about 60 years. That's a long time. And even though, sewing machine oil, which is mineral oil, even though it does not, it doesn't evaporate like water, and it can last when I say a long time, I mean many, many, many years, but it will eventually oxidize. It just takes forever. But when it does oxidize, and heat will make it oxidize faster, those of you who were thinking about putting a sewing machine in an attic space, please, please, please don't. Please don't do that. When the oil oxidizes, and it gets like a glue, like a cement, and it can be softened, and that's what I'm hoping to do here. As you look at the underbelly of the once mighty and probably not that cheap Simpsons sewing machine model N-250-B-3. There's nothing more exotic. Usually they have these fancy names for their models, but this one, that's just what they called it. But made in Japan, and you could probably anchor a boat with it. It is that freaking heavy. It is cast iron and extra thick. All the casting itself is extra thick. The mechanical parts where the magic happens, that's all steel, very lovely steel. But wow, I don't know what this cost new. It would have been less expensive than a Singer, because Singers at this time were still, they had a number of factories still going in Europe. And in the United States, I think, by the late 60s, early 70s, Singer is starting to outsource machines too. They were one of the last to outsource, actually. But this machine, we hope, will come back to life. I've never seen one like it. And then hopefully in future videos, we will talk about the built-in buttonholer and what we are possibly going to do with that device, and why I have a love-hate relationship with those. But we'll talk more about that. You have to crawl before you walk here, and right now we can't even crawl because we're stuck. This machine is just super stuck, more than most. But what do you think, everyone? I think what we have here is a machine that get that thing up in the attic. I don't have room for it. And it sat and sat, and then someone cleared out the attic one day, and there it was. It's like, oh gosh, this must be something awesome. And it's been sitting too long. So again, the more of these machines we rescue, the more we get them, we basically keep them out of the landfills, which would be such a shame, because they are designed with such incredible robust construction that they're heirloom quality. I mean, at least one or a couple of generations of people have used this machine or had it, and many more generations can use this thing. It just needs to be woken up and maintained, because back in the day things were built to last, but they required maintenance. That's why many of your modern consumer products don't tell you they need maintenance, because they die and go into the landfill before they can be maintained, because they're not designed to be maintained. And many of you know this. The heartbreak of obsolescence has hit many of us many times, and I think that's what draws me to this hobby after all these years. It keeps me fascinated with something that I just by accident 12 years ago learned as part of a grad school experiment. Thank you all for watching. If you have not, please consider donating to the channel. You can click on my Buy Me a Coffee links and help support my efforts to get more of these machines. I have to buy them. Normally I purchase them, and maybe I get a case or a table. Sometimes I don't even get a pedal. But I believe in saving them, and your support will certainly help me do that, because it's a shame to throw something away that was designed to last. And I'd like to think that my grandparents would agree. Maybe your grandparents would agree, or maybe your parents, or maybe you agree yourself. I don't know. But I appreciate all of your support. And we will see you next time, and we will see what happens with this machine. I can make no promises. I don't know if it'll wake up, but I sure hope it will. If I could wake up a FOF 360 after 20 years of attic space, well, fingers crossed, everyone. No promises, but fingers crossed. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.